Hey, what is going on, guys? This is SMEB Reviews, and today we are going to be doing our third episode of Album Diaries, where I talk about an album that I've loved or hated for a long time, one that I have a lot of stories with, and really dive into it, review it after hearing the album many times, and not just something that I hear a couple times and rush it out, and just tell my stories about it. This week, or today, it is going to be Abbey Road by the Beatles. So, one of the Beatles' most popular, most well-known albums, at least because of that album cover. It's incredibly well known, and honestly, I would argue that this is my favorite Beatles album. Now, along with that, there's some caveats because necessarily my favorite songs don't appear on here. There is a certain set of songs that are, and I will get into those later, but some of my favorite songs come from other albums. But for overall quality, this album wins out for me. So to start off, fun fact, this album is actually the reason I started YouTube. It's the first actual album that I ever reviewed when I used to be a part of my high school journalism program years ago. This was quite a bit before I started actually doing YouTube. And so for like 4 or 5 years, I was working on that, and I started an album review. And honestly, I'm not gonna say that it was a good album review because I didn't really give any opinions. I kind of just analyzed what the meanings of songs were. I didn't really know how to write an album review. I won't lie. It's not good. I can acknowledge that. I think it was well composed, but just not for a review. It was definitely more of like a essay about the quality or like the meanings of the songs. So, Abbey Road, probably like I said, my favorite Beatles album. I absolutely love it. And part of what I love is that B-side, the long, like, interconnecting songs, because Me and Mr. Mustard, Polythene Pam, and She Came In Through the Bathroom Window is a great, like, suite of songs, but not nearly as good as the even better suite of Golden Slumbers, Carry That Weight in the End. That combo of songs, those three, probably are my third favorite Beatles song, because I'm going to call them all one song. And so I just this album, it's probably what got me into the Beatles originally. I think it was the first Beatles album I really listened to all the way through. I'd listened to singles because my mom got me into the Beatles, and she's really what got me started on music. She used to love the Beatles, or she still does, and she wasn't the type to just like the singles. She knows all the albums, though typically what we listened to was just like the one compilation that they put out. And what really helped me dive into it was when a friend of mine got super into the Beatles, and he like listened to everything and was telling me all about it, and he'd sing some of the songs, and I just end up singing them along with him. And one of the ones I remember is Something. I remember walking down the hallways of my middle school, singing Something with him, and middle school, like early middle school, is probably when I got into the Beatles and really started diving in. So I think the first album I bought was, at least digitally. I don't mean like CD or whatever. Like the first album I bought on digital, and especially of theirs, was Abbey Road. And I absolutely loved it. I used to mow a lot, and so I'd end up playing it while I was driving and or mowing, and that is where some of the problems with this album comes from me, because it's starting to get overplayed for me. It's not bad, and it still probably is my favorite, but it's not one that I revisit all the time because I just know it so well, and it just became overplayed. Especially the songs I already didn't like, they just became worse in my opinion. Because and Sun King, I never really liked either of those, and they just became worse and worse. All the flaws of this album became more and more significant, and like the total like tonal shift between Something, Maxwell Silverhammer, and then Oh Darling, so jarring. That doesn't mean that I don't love all three of those songs, but it continued to highlight some of the problems I had with this album. Even Come Together, a super popular song, I just do not like. It's probably my least favorite Beatles song, or at least top 10. I really dislike that song. But that being said, it's still my favorite because I still think it is one of such high quality. I think that all these songs are so creative and interesting. I think Octopus's Garden is probably Ringo's best song, at least probably ever. I haven't dug into every single solo album he put out, but a lot of the stuff he puts out as covers anyway. So I'd say Octopus's Garden is better, is his best, definitely better than Yellow Submarine. Although Photograph is pretty good, and it might rival it. Um, and I think that like with the exception of like three songs I mentioned, all of these songs are really great. And one of the things I love is that we don't end with the end, which you'd think you would. But this was pretty much signifying the end of the Beatles. I know we still had Let It Be, which was long. I mean, I'm sure you know the story where it that this was the last thing they recorded, but then Let It Be was just what came out last. But I think that the fact that they intended for this to be the last album, and they end it with this really short, sweet Her Majesty, and I really like this song because it's so short and it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's super quick, and you kind of want more, kind of like how you wanted more of the Beatles. I mean, some people obviously not, but the like everyone like the Beatles is one of the most loved bands, and like they were only around for, I mean, they were around longer, but producing music like for 7 years, not even. So they were really short, and then they left, and you want more, but you just can't have it. Just like with Her Majesty, it's a really good album um, that I just really do love, and I have so many memories with this. Um, but it just like I know that this review's become more of just me talking about memories, but that's because this album is really hard for me to talk about. It's one of those like so infamous album or like so famous albums in my mind. One of those albums that I can just hear so distinctly, and so probably everybody knows. Like, why would I need to actually review Abbey Road, one of the most popular albums of all time? I don't feel like I need to. I mean, it's a great album. I love it. It is still my favorite, and I'd give it an 8 out of 10, which may be a little short, little not quite as much. And that's not to say that the other albums aren't amazing. Honestly, I'd say all their albums are good at best, or at worst. But it just this album, because of so many memories, because I love so many tracks on here so much. Oh Darling is such a great song. I Want You, She's So Heavy, Here Comes the Sun, though cheesy, is just great. Like, it's the perfect happy song, and I just love it. I can't change that. And like, it is my favorite album, even though it's an 8. Probably most of the next albums like Revolver or Strange, not Strange Desire, I'm thinking Bleachers, Sgt. Pepper's is would end up coming in at like 7.5s. So this is a great album, possibly even 8s. But this is definitely like around an 8, and it's probably just because I've listened to it so much. But it's still my favorite, my most nostalgic, and I love it. What did you guys think? I was a little late. I know it was the 50th anniversary recently, and I just missed it. I was a little late. Whatever. Sorry. Don't. I tried. I didn't. I got busy, and honestly, I didn't think about doing this until like 2 days ago. So, what did you guys think of this album? Please let me know down below. I really appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you guys later.